Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto, and this is going to be part 2 of the disassembly of the 86 GSX-R 750, otherwise known as the Junkyard Slabbie. Stay tuned. There's the inside of the exhaust ports. They look kind of gummy. But not rusty. Well, that one looks a bit questionable there, doesn't it? An exhaust valve. Cam cover is off. So just at a quick look inside here, it doesn't look terrible. There's a couple of marks on the cam lobes right there, but the part that's, I mean, that's not perfect, but it's not, it's just at the very, very edge. So it's obviously it's not part that's actually wearing on that rocker. So generally speaking, I'm pleasantly surprised by what I see in here, just from a first glance. I mean, the main thing is it's not all rusty, and I was worried that having sat outside for many, many years, that this was just going to be a complete disaster in here when I opened it up. However, at this point, it doesn't look to be too bad. I'm also pleasantly surprised because I didn't know until now. I guess I haven't got the manual in the mail yet, but these are all adjustable, just like on the VFRs, easily adjustable with a wrench and whatnot for the valve clearances, and no issues with doing shiv under bucket type of stuff, which I find unappealing. So yeah, that's not too bad. So we'll see. This is obviously, the head is going to have to come off here, but at a first glance, it's not really bad at all. So I just see the one little mark here on the very edge of this cam lobe. I mean, this is the part that's riding on the, because it's all shiny, riding on the rocker, but this piece on the edge there is a bit rough, but that could easily be smoothed off. I'm not too concerned at this point. So yeah, well, that's a good news story in there for sure. Not a complete disaster. I don't know how good this cam chain is. There's not really a lot of slack in there or anything. But boy, that looks like a really thin cam chain. Looks like something that's been taken off a kid's bicycle. Holy cow. Like, I just think about the one that I just put in the CBX 750, the Takasago, no, the Tsubaki, it was Tsubaki chain. And holy cow, that thing was just a real beefy chain with a lot of lacing. This is just exactly the kind of thing you'd see on a kid's bicycle. I mean, I'm surprised that something like that can actually hold together. I mean, it's just basic, very, very basic chain. And this is a 2-year newer bike than the CBX. And I know the CBX has had problems with their cam chains, and so I can't imagine. And I don't know if these things hold up or not. It'd be interesting to find out. I'll have to do a bit of research as to whether that cam chain should be replaced in due course, or what the deal is with these things. But anyway, but I guess this is an 88 engine, so it's even worse to say that this is actually a 4-year newer style of engine, although obviously different manufacturer. Okay, clutch is in the process of coming apart, and now I've got my universal clutch holding tool on here. I bent the washer back. I'm going to try to get this nut off. Don't want to put a lot of pressure on these, so I'm kind of putting the minimum amount just to hold this, because I don't want to damage or crack this inner basket here. So there's no No visible rust on anything in here. So that's all a good sign. But this, even though I drained the oil out of this, and I took a lot of oil out of it, it was very gasoline diluted. But there's still oil in there. All right, so here is my riv nut gun. And it came with all of these zinc-coated riv nuts, which I cannot use on this particular application. That's why I bought the aluminum ones. And I just successfully installed a new riv nut in there. So on the intake camshaft, one thing that has me concerned is the intake cam journal on number 3. You can kind of see here that this area here is kind of flattened off. Like the overall height of the cam, as I've measured it, is still okay, but this side of it has started to wear a little flat. So as far as the height of it and the how much is going to push down on that rocker arm, the height will be fine, but the duration will probably be adversely affected to some degree. Now, I'm not really going to ride this bike per se, however, so it'll probably run, but here's the issue I have. If I can get a reasonably priced set of cams used off eBay that are in better shape, then I think I might go that route. I did make some inquiries as to what it would cost in order to get that repaired, and first of all, it was exceptionally difficult to find anywhere here in the province of Ontario to do that. I'm way in the north. There was nobody up here. I went down to call a few people down in the city in Toronto, and a few of the places no longer do it, and the one guy that does do it said, well, I don't have the masters, the patterns for that, and even if I could base it on the other ones that are there, he wanted $600 or $700 to repair one journal. So just that, $600 or $700, and I'm pretty certain that I can get a full two good cams used, probably for $300 Canadian. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my eyes open for a replacement cam. There's no point in paying the money. And the other thing the guy said to me, he said, well, he goes, you could just bring it to me or send it to me and I can repolish it for you. He goes, it probably won't make a whole lot of difference in how the bike runs if you've still got the height that you need. Now, I don't know much about that. I'm sure it would affect it somehow because obviously you may have the right height lift, but you're not going to have the same duration if it's slightly flattened on this side. The other thing that I'm not sure of is, I believe, well, these are hardened steel for sure, but what I don't know is how much of this is hardened. It's not hardened all the way through, I think, and so once you start getting wear on one part of that lobe, I think it's possible that you actually start to get down to the softer, unhardened steel, and once that happens, this is just going to start to wear faster and faster. So, could I get away with this as part of, if it was just a garage clean? Yes, probably, I think. But at this point, I think it's probably wise to see if I can find a replacement camshaft. And as far as I understand from the research that I've been doing, there's a number of different cams that will fit in here, but to my knowledge and to what I've read, those that have done much more research on this before me and are far wiser will say that the 88-89 cams are probably the most aggressive in the GSX-R 750. So I'd like to find a set of 88-89 cams for it again, so we'll see how that goes. But I think the wise thing to do here is I'm not going to order anything for this until I get the rest of this head off, because I want to make sure that this engine is still salvageable. I don't want to get the head off and find that the cylinders are completely snafu'd, and it's going to end up costing me more money than it's worth to actually try to repair this engine as opposed to getting something to replace it. So I'm going to try to exercise patience, and I'm usually the guy that as soon as I see that, I'm going to order a cam or a set of cams without kind of, you know, then, you know, time goes by and I, you know, something else happens and something else happens and I think, shit, you know, I could have saved myself, you know, $300 by not buying those camshafts. So I'm going to be, this one's going to push my budget to the limit, I'm sure. So I'm going to have to exercise patience to make sure I don't overspend. So behind here is the starter clutch. So I'm interested to know whether or not I have a puller in my inventory that's going to get this off. Otherwise it's going to cost me basically $160 plus shipping to get one off eBay, which I'd rather not. So we'll see how easy this thing is to get off. I have a kit that has a bunch of pullers in it, but you know, whether or not they fit, we shall see. So again, just to keep everything organized, use this as a template, draw around it my cardboard, and then all of the bolts can get stored in the right place, and then I'll put some tape on the back so the bolts can't pull through and get lost. There's the starter clutch. So I gotta see if my holder tool will fit in these holes while I take that off. Well, darn it, my the pins on this holder tool, well, when you get them lined up, no matter where you put them, the tool actually hits this. Okay, so on the off chance that this might actually work, I'm going to use my air impact gun on here. Worked. Yeah, so my universal puller set that I have is not even going to come close to dealing with this. That's pretty big. I mean, that's a good couple of inch diameter for it to thread on the outside of this starter clutch, and then the bolt that goes through the center to thread in there. So yeah, all that stuff I have is way smaller than that. So I found a puller in the UK. It's not a genuine Suzuki, it's an aftermarket quality. It seems like a quality puller. So I've ordered that, $70 Canadian delivered, so that wasn't too bad. It was going to cost me, I found one in Canada at a distributor here, and it was $76 plus shipping, with no guarantee that it was going to get here any faster. So, and here's what advice I could use here. So let me know what you think. I really do appreciate the advice and the comments here. So as I've said before, engine work, disassembly, repair, whatever you want to call it, is not my forte. It's not my specialty. It's not my happy place necessarily. And you know, my experience on stripping engines to this degree is, you know, less than a handful. Let's put it that way, of the 4 strokes. I've done a couple of 2 strokes all the way down, and I've done maybe 3. This will be the 4th, probably, 4-cylinder 4-stroke that I've done. One of the things that makes me extremely uncomfortable is using pullers. But my paranoia about using pullers is stripping out the inside of the crank, or you know, stripping, you know, this part here, as opposed to the puller bolt itself, stripping or what have you. So that's my worry. So and I've seen people online use a holder or a wrench on the outside piece, and you use a socket on the inside piece, and you keep cranking, and you smack it with a hammer, crank it some more, smack it with a hammer, blah blah blah, and eventually it pops off. I've done that myself on a Suzuki 2-stroke, and it worked fine. And I've seen other people, they just put it on, they tighten the outside one, and they just hit the middle one with an impact gun, and just keep hammering on that thing with the impact gun until it pops off. So what is the best way to do it from your perspective? Because well, again, the last thing I want to be doing here is stripping out the threads on this thing. You know, if you strip the threads on the puller, that's one thing. Stripping the threads on here would be a disaster. So that's what I want to avoid, and I would like to know the best way to do that. Suzuki manual just shows a wrench on the outside threaded part of it's like almost looks like a large socket that screws over here, and then they got a wrench to hold that, and then they've got a socket on a ratchet for the center one. So that's kind of the way that the manual shows it. So I assume you can just kind of, you know, smack that with a hammer a couple of times and eventually jar it loose. But those folks who are well schooled in engine disassembly and this kind of stuff, I would appreciate hearing from you. Let me know what you think, because by the time this video is published, I'm going to guess that this is still going to be on here. So here the right-hand pulsar cover has been removed, and I believe that there is the oil pressure sensor, which will have to be removed. And then what I'm actually going to do now is I just kind of want to see how the timing is, make sure that's, before I take it apart or pull the cams, I want to put this at top dead center, so I need to rotate this almost a full turn to get this back lined up with the center of this particular pulsar here, and then we'll see where the camshafts are aligned. So here we have the T-mark for top dead center aligned with the center of this pulsar, and then up at the top we can see that the intake cam, if we try to focus on that for a second. So the arrow on the intake cam is supposed to be level with the top of the case, and similarly this arrow on this one is supposed to be level with the top of this case. And then there's another arrow here. So once you take this off, you're supposed to be able to count the number of link pins, and I think it's either 20 or 21. I'd have to check the manual between that arrow and that arrow to make sure that you've got the correct cam timing in place there. So I rotated the cams so everything's at top dead center, and cam journal number 2 is also now I see is pitted as well. It's also looks like it's a little flat on this side, so I would say, yeah, if the rest of this engine is savable, then that I need a new set of cams in here, because that would make 2 journals that are snookered. So there we go. So once I understand that this engine is a viable repair and rebuild, I'm going to take this generator slash alternator. I'll take it in and get it tested, because something funky is definitely going on, given that connector got melted. So I'm getting ready to start the process of removing the camshaft. So I've taken out the cam chain tensioner, pretty straightforward. Took off the cam chain idler gear, which is sitting right in here, pretty straightforward. I do have it all set up as top dead center for cylinder 1. I've got all the timing marks aligned, and I just pull this gasket off here so I can see now that the idler gear's off. I don't know if they just kind of reclocked ever so slightly because I didn't take this thing off earlier, but yeah, I don't know if they're exactly in time. They probably will be a little bit closer, I think, in time when that idler kind of goes back on and maybe puts a bit of pressure. It'll rotate this one down a little and this one down a little. So the reason I'm kind of documenting this now is I have a feeling that will just make the process a little bit easier when I go to put it back together, because if I don't know for sure, you know, if you clock these perfectly in time when you put them in, and when you put that idler back in later, is it going to kind of over-rotate these once you tension this up? I don't know. And there is 21 link pins between this timing mark number 2 here and timing mark number 3. So, and then I think you can, you're supposed to measure the distance between those 21 links to make sure this cam chain hasn't overstretched. So we'll check that out along the way as well. All right, so the cams are out. Just as a point of note, yes, I know this is sisal baler twine. I had it laying around. And if I was doing just kind of a only cams out here, I wouldn't be using something like this, but this whole thing is going to be removed and cleaned before it ever goes back together, so I'm not concerned about any of these kind of hairy bits on it. And it's not bad in here. I mean, it's not perfect. There's a couple of rockers here, I think, that have got some of the chrome isn't perfect on them, or whatever the surface is, like that. But it is what it is. Some of these things, I don't know if I'm ever going to find other ones or should replace them, depending on what the surface is like. Depending on what I find, there's a couple of options here. I mean, it could take me a while to find a donor 1200 banded engine for it. So that would still be my preferred way to go if this turns out to be just such a money pit to rectify this engine. Like if I have to replace and find new rockers, new cams, depending on what the cylinders look like, depending on what the bottom end is like, we'll see, I guess. If worst comes to worst, what I could end up doing is just getting this to the point where at least it runs for now, and then I could just kind of get it back together, get it running, get it looking pretty, and then continue my search for a banded engine. But we'll see. We'll keep tearing it down and see what we find. So here you can see this is cam lobe number 2 on the intake. I've got everything set up here so you kind of see exhaust left, intake left. Just everything just kind of labeled out on the paper here. I got all the cam holder caps are laid out in the correct order. So yeah, you can see this one is a little, I mean, it's got the pitting on the top, and the this side of the journal is kind of worn down a little bit. There's a little bit of wear on that one. It's nowhere near as bad. And if I could flip over this guy here, you can see that one is probably the worst, number 3. Number 4, they all show a little bit of wear for sure, but yeah, the exhaust cam actually looks really good compared to the others. Doesn't look anywhere near as bad. And one of the guys at a cam place in the UK where they might have a set for me if I need them said, yeah, the intake cams generally wear first. This is the rocker for intake number 3, which is one that had the worst wear on the journal, and it's actually kind of cupped. It's supposed to be slightly kind of convexed in shape. On this one is right here. It's convexed here, but it's concaved here, so it's been wearing. These ones, the rest of them don't feel too bad. This one, number 2, is a little rough, but it's still the right shape. All the others feel really good. Yeah, these all feel really good. This one is totally euchred. That cam rocker is just absolutely foobarred. So I guess we got to add that to the list of damages and wear. This is the stuff that that adds up and just drains the wallet, right? If you can find it. So this is fighting me. I'm trying to get the head off here, and there's 12 nuts that hold the head on. They've all been removed. Gradually and in a specific pattern, they were taken off. And then there's one 6mm that kind of sits underneath there. That wasn't even in there at all. So. All right, I got the cylinder off. The head, I should say. And taking a look in the cylinders, doesn't look too bad. I mean, they're you know, they're shiny, but there's no scrapes or real scratches to see in there. They're not bad at all. They would hone out quite nicely. There's a lot of carbon on these pistons, though. They're really, really carboned up. There's a lot of crap here. So I've got to move the 1 and 4 to bottom, just to see what those bores are like. But 2 and 3 look pretty darn good. This is the head. Again, just carbon like crazy. And obviously somebody has put a fairly recent set of plugs in these two. These are old plugs for sure. So, you know, why do we have no compression? Well, I don't know yet. With this much carbon, it could be anything. It could be, you know, these valves could be stuck. It could be just all kinds of, it wouldn't probably take very much of this junk to be caught underneath a valve. If there's this much carbon, then, you know, it shouldn't be a huge surprise. These are the exhaust ports I think I showed before. There's a lot of junk in here. I'll put some WD-40 or something in these and see how they kind of bleed down over the next little while. I think that should be a reasonably good test. I could probably put, I've seen somebody put soapy water in here too and just kind of, you know, put some air, like just kind of close this off with your hand and just hit it with an air line too. That would probably show some bubbles, I would imagine, but WD-40 is just as easy. I can give that a try and just see what bleeds out of there. All right, well, I filled everything with WD-40 and so far, yeah, they're all leaking profusely. So that, I think that probably answers the why do I have no compression question. This one here is probably leaking the least. That's what, number 2. You know, little consolation, it's still leaking down. I haven't looked on the intake side yet, but no doubt it's the evidence suggests that yeah, the valves are just all crusted up. These also don't look too bad. You can actually still see hone marks on number 4 for sure. Yeah, I still see some cylinder honing marks on these as well. Looks like a bit of is that rust down there? Let me get a rag to wipe that and just see. Yeah, there's a little bit of rust on that cylinder wall right there. So that might hone out. We'll see. So you can see that cylinders 3 and 4 are really bleeding down pretty quick, and these are the ones that read 0 psi on the compression test. These ones were like 20 and 40. So this was 40, I believe. It's kind of leaking and bleeding down the least. It was 20, 40, 0, 0. So the way these are kind of leaking down like that kind of supports the readings that I got. So yeah, there's no rust in any of them except for number 1 down in there. So probably because when again, you know, bike's sitting on the side stand, if there any water does get in, it's likely going to be in number 1. Next steps, I guess we'll take the head off and go from there. There's a reason that I left the engine in the frame, and that is, I think it's just a lot easier to muscle some of this stuff off and do things like this removal of the sprag clutch. If you've got to do any sort of Armstrong work, if you've got the engine moving around all over the place, to me it's just a lot more difficult to stabilize the engine and apply a lot of force when you've got to get stuff off. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is this is going to be stripped down far enough that I'll either just lay the bike on its side and take the engine out that way, or I think again it might be light enough by the time the cylinder's off and pistons are off that my son and I can just lift it straight out of that frame without too much difficulty. So there's about 10 minutes. Worst, that was 0. Next worst, number 3, that was 0 psi. This is number 2, it's the best, and it was 40. And this is number 1, and it was 20 psi. So head is off, and I think, as I said before, there's a little bit of a rust patch right there, which doesn't look horrible. There's a very slight one on number 2, and 3 and 4. I can't really tell because they're too dirty. I got some paper towel here. Real-time examinations. Yeah, there's a bit of staining in all of them actually. So this one is quite bad right here. You don't really feel it per se, but you can certainly see it. There's a couple of marks on that one. Ooh, that doesn't look good. That does not look good. That's not good at all. That's not good. See, that's... I don't know what happened to that. So here's the culprit for the scratches in that number 4 cylinder. There is no C-clip holding in the wrist pin or gudgeon pin, depending on where you're from, in this number 4 piston. It's just missing. It'll come right out. So obviously that has kind of worked its way out and then back in at some point, but it did its damage. That was the problem. So it'll be interesting to see when I get the rest of this apart if there's a C-clip sitting in the pan anywhere, or if somebody just forgot to put one in. It's, again, not a surprise. Old sport bike engines tend to get ridden hard and put away wet. So yeah, we'll see. Again, one of the other options here is just to clean everything up as best I can, acknowledge that it's not going to be perfect. It might still burn a little bit of oil, especially on one of those cylinders, number 4. But if it runs until I find my 1200 Bandit donor, that might be the right way to go. It's starting to add up fast. So I think I'm gonna have to think on this a little bit, see what the best way to go is. And then I haven't taken the head completely apart yet, so I don't even know if these valves are gonna have pitted seats and how good that is or isn't gonna be. And we haven't even got to the bottom end yet. So the more I look, the more I think that my original plan of finding a donor Bandit was the right way to go, and probably the less expensive way to go, with a more reliable result at the end of it all. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to seriously consider that. as the right option here. Anyway, time to think on that. Let me know what you think in the comments. So I just use the inside micrometers to measure the bores, and they are 73.8, 73.9 mil, 2.91 inches. So they've definitely been bored over, for sure. So apparently, after doing a bit of reading, some of the GSX-Rs, I thought it was the water-cooled ones, used a triple layer gasket, kind of a factory triple layer, but maybe it is. It's hard to know. I mean, this looks like it's, yeah, I think it's just the way that they came. Because if you look at that that brass sealing ring there, which is for, you know, for whatever, it's pinned over at the back, and it was obviously inserted this way, and it's yeah, so I guess that's the way they came. So it's not that somebody has stacked up three of these things to lower compression. It looks like that's just the way they come. Here's the underside of the cylinders. So I just kind of give you a shot at this set of gouges here that are in there. It's pretty atrocious. So that, again, I'm not completely surprised by what I've found. In some ways it's probably better than I expected it to be. I really expected this whole thing to be full of rust and to be, you know, far worse than it actually is. And yeah, that's why I actually originally bought that Bandit, was because that engine was going to go in here. So the problem right now is any donor bikes or potential bikes that are out there for this thing are, you know, $2,000 to $3,000. A high mileage 1200 Bandit, that's basically what they're going for. So, and I'm not paying that kind of money for just a bike with an engine. The wrecking yards want $1,500 for a running Bandit engine, because I have priced them that way. And I think that's a little ridiculous as well. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. There's so many different ways that this could go. I am going to finish this bike one way or another. It's just a case of which engine is going to go in here. So share your thoughts and your reasons and your rationale, and we'll see which way I go. So I've re-recorded and edited this part of the video a few times now, because I keep rambling through what I think my reasonable options are, given what I'm finding. And so here's my final thought on this for today. And that is, I'm going to continue to tear this engine down. If the bottom end looks okay, if it looks good, and I don't have issues with bearings and cranks and whatnot, then I think my most viable and cost-effective solution would be to go on eBay, find a new set of cylinders, a new set of jugs with pistons included, standard bore, then get some brand new standard bore rings, get at least the intake cam for the head, and at least 2 rockers, 2 of these guys, and that would give me probably the most cost-effective and best way to move forward with this restoration and rebuild. And I know, folks, just for context on cost, I'm in Canada, and some of the stuff on eBay looks pretty reasonably priced, especially if you're in the United States, because United States has a lot of really good stuff on sellers have good stuff on eBay. And if you're in the United States, the cost of the stuff on eBay is pretty fair. The problem with being a Canadian buyer on eBay, buying out of the United States, is by the time I get it, it costs 3 times what the item is listed at in US dollars. So an item listed at $100 in the US dollars on eBay, by the time I get it into my hands here, it's cost me 300 Canadian. We've got duties, exchange rate, and shipping. Shipping from US to Canada is astronomically high. Many of the items cost more to ship than they actually do to buy the item itself. if I can find sellers, usually in Germany, Japan, and that kind of thing, the cost of shipping is far less than it is from the United States to Canada. Doesn't make any sense to me. There must be some sort of reason for that, but yeah, we're right on the border, and shipping out of the US is cost prohibitive in many cases. A lot of stuff I just cannot buy because I can't justify the cost by the time it gets to me. But anyway, there are German sellers. There's other sellers around different parts of the world that have some stuff. So I think, yep, that's the plan. Because I can't use this. These marks in here are too deep. This would have to be rebored again, and different pistons, and to find twice over pistons. I'd have to go new. I'm not going to find 2 over pistons for this used. So that's just not worth the adventure doing that. So let's go with that as the plan 1 for now, and we'll press on. Enjoy the Christmas holidays, or whatever holiday is that you celebrate. And we'll be back in the new year. I'm not sure whether there'll be a video on this particular bike next week, in the week of Christmas, but there will be a video posted for sure of some sort. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.